The Galactic Council had watched humanity for 3 long years before they allowed them to join. Every species in the galaxy had been studied, measured, and ranked. The Council believed they understood humans perfectly. Their conclusion was simple: humans were weak. An ambassador stood in the great hall of the collective. The ceiling rose so high that clouds formed near the top. Crystal beings towered over him, their bodies glowing with cold blue light. Each one stood 3 meters tall. Their voices echoed like thunder in a cave. Behind, Captain kept her hands visible and empty. This was the rule. Humans must never appear threatening. Humans must always show respect. Humans must accept whatever terms the stronger species offered. "We accept your terms," said. His voice was calm and quiet. "The mining rights to the belt will transfer to the collective." The leader pulsed with pleasure. Light rippled through its crystal body like waves in water. "Wise choice, little ambassador. Your species learns quickly. We have watched your broadcasts from Earth. We have seen your wars." They said nothing. "Such amateur violence," the continued. "Such emotional fighting. Your people cry about death. You build statues to remember the fallen. You write sad songs about battle. It is clear that humans fight only when they are scared. You are not warriors. You are frightened children playing with weapons." His jaw tightened. Her hands curled into fists at her sides, but she stayed silent. This was also the rule. The waved one massive crystal arm. "Go now. Tell your people that the belt belongs to us. Be grateful we did not take more." Bowed his head slightly. Then he turned and walked out of the great hall, followed close behind. Neither of them spoke until they reached their shuttle. Far above the planet, the human diplomatic ship waited in orbit. It was a small vessel, built for talking rather than fighting. Lieutenant watched the shuttle rise from the planet surface through the observation window. Beside him, Ensign checked her console. "They gave up the belt," said quietly. He spoke in Korean. The alien translators still had trouble with Korean. It was one of the few private languages humans had left. Looked up from her screen. The council ordered us to make peace. We made peace. We made surrender. Is there a difference? Turned away from the window. His face was hard to read. The think we gave up because we are afraid of war. Aren't we? The question hung in the air between them. Took a long time to answer. There is a difference, he said finally, between fearing war and understanding it. The Galactic Council kept files on every species. Their file on humanity was very thick. They had studied human history for decades. They knew about the trenches of the First World War, where millions died in mud and blood. They knew about the atomic bombs that burned 2 cities to ash in seconds. They knew about the genocides, the revolutions, the endless cycle of violence that filled human history. They also knew about human art. Humans made paintings of war that showed suffering, not glory. Humans wrote poems about dead soldiers that made readers weep. Humans built monuments with the names of the fallen carved in stone, so no one would forget the cost. The council looked at all this evidence and made their judgment. Humans were psychologically damaged. They were so scared of their own violent past that they would do almost anything to avoid fighting. They would give up territory. They would accept unfair treaties. They would bow their heads and say yes to any demand as long as it meant peace. This judgment spread through the galaxy. Every species heard the same message. Humans were soft. Humans were easy targets. Humans would not fight back. The council was not entirely wrong. Humans did fear war. They feared it more than almost anything. But the council made one terrible mistake. They never asked the right question. They never asked why. Ambassador sat alone in his quarters aboard the room was small and plain. A single photograph hung on the wall. It showed an old woman with gray hair and kind eyes. His grandmother. She had died before he was born, but his mother had told him her stories. His grandmother had survived the Korean War. She had been a child when the bombs fell on her village. She had walked through fire and smoke, carrying her baby brother on her back. She had eaten grass and tree bark to stay alive. She had seen things that no child should ever see. When the war ended, she did not celebrate. She did not talk about victory. Instead, she spent the rest of her life working for peace. She became a teacher. She taught children about history, about the cost of violence, about why war should be the last choice, never the first. We don't fear war because we are weak, she had told her daughter, who told her son. We fear it because we know what we become when we stop fearing it. Touched the photograph gently. Then he turned to his desk and began writing his report to Earth. The galaxy believed humans were soft. The galaxy believed humans would never fight. The galaxy believed that fear made humans weak. The galaxy was about to learn how wrong it was. Far away in a quiet corner of neutral space, a small agricultural station called spun slowly in the darkness between stars. 43 humans lived there. Farmers, teachers, scientists, families with children. They grew food. They studied plants. They lived peaceful lives. They had no idea that 12 warships were already on their way. And they had no idea what they were about to become. The message came at dawn station time. Commander was drinking tea in her office when the alarm started screaming. She set down her cup and walked quickly to the control room. Her bones ached. She was 63 years old. She had retired from the Korean Navy 15 years ago. She had come to station to grow vegetables and watch the stars. She had not expected to fight again. "What do we have?" she asked. A chief engineer pointed at the main screen. 12 red dots were moving toward the station. Each dot was a warship. They sent a message, said. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. They want us to surrender. They say station now belongs to the collective. If we don't leave in 6 hours, they will use force. I stared at the screen. 12 warships. 300 soldiers per ship. That meant 3,600 trained killers coming for 43 farmers. Have you contacted Earth? Yes, help is coming, but they are 18 hours away. 18 hours. Did the math in her head. The would reach the station in 6 hours. Even if her people surrendered immediately, there was no guarantee the aliens would let them live. They did not see humans as equals. They saw humans as pests. She turned to face her staff. 12 people stood in the control room. Behind them, through the window, she could see the agricultural dome where the rest of the crew was working. Children were playing between the rows of vegetables. She could hear their laughter through the speakers. Gather everyone in the main hall, she said. We need to talk. 20 minutes later, all 43 residents of station sat in the main hall, stood at the front. She looked at their faces, young faces, old faces, scared faces. These were not soldiers. They were botanists, teachers, engineers, cooks. They had come here to escape the violence of the galaxy, not to become part of it. You all know the situation began. 12 warships will arrive in 6 hours. They have ordered us to surrender. Earth has sent help, but it will not arrive for another 18 hours. That leaves us with a choice. She paused. The room was completely silent. We can surrender. Open the airlocks. Let them take the station. Maybe they will let us live. Maybe they will put us on a ship and send us away. Or maybe they will kill us anyway. They do not have a good record with prisoners. A woman named raised her hand. She was the station's teacher. Her daughter, 8 years old, sat beside her. What is the other choice? He looked at her for a long moment. We fight. Someone laughed. It was not a happy laugh. Fight with what? We have no weapons. We have no training. We are farmers. Yes, said. We are farmers, but we are also Korean. And Koreans have been fighting invaders for 5,000 years. We did not always have weapons. We did not always have training. But we always had courage. And we always found a way. And she turned to show them. Activated the main screen. A diagram of the station appeared. He began pointing at different sections. We have agricultural drones, 50 of them. They are designed to plant seeds and harvest crops, but they can also fly fast and carry heavy loads. If we reprogram them, they can be weapons. He pointed at another section. We have atmospheric processors. They pump oxygen through the station, but they can also pump other things. We have fertilizers, pesticides, chemicals that are harmless to plants but very dangerous to crystal beings. More sections lit up on the screen. We have maintenance robots. We have welding torches. We have hull cutters. We have pressure suits and emergency airlocks and backup power systems. Stepped forward again. We cannot win a fair fight, so we will not fight fair. We will use every tool we have. We will turn this station into a trap. And when they come inside, we will show them what farmers can do when their families are in danger. The room was still silent, but something had changed. The fear was still there, but now there was something else too, something harder. An old man named stood up slowly. He was the station's cook. His hands were rough from decades of work. My grandfather fought he said. He was a fisherman. He had never held a gun in his life. But when the enemy came, he picked up a rifle and fought for 3 days without sleep. He used to tell me, Koreans don't start wars. We finish them. One by one, others began to stand. She stood holding her daughter's hand. Tell me what to do. A young man named barely 20 years old stepped forward. I work with the drones. I can reprogram them in 2 hours. An elderly woman named Bora raised her hand. She was the station's doctor. I know which chemicals are most dangerous. I will help with the atmospheric systems. Looked at her people. Farmers, teachers, cooks, doctors, children. In 6 hours they would face 300 trained soldiers. Oh, then let us begin, she said. For the next 5 hours, station transformed. Drones were for attack. Chemical tanks were connected to ventilation systems. Welding torches became weapons. Hull cutters became traps. Every corridor was planned, every ambush prepared. When the boarding parties finally breached the airlocks, they expected frightened farmers begging for mercy. Instead, they found hell. 12 hours later, the relief fleet arrived. They found station still standing. 31 humans had survived. 11 had died defending their home. Of the 300 soldiers who had entered the station, none walked out alive. Commander sat in the control room, her face covered in dust and blood. She sent one message to Earth. We held. The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so crowded. Representatives from every known species filled the seats. Floating cameras recorded everything. The news had spread across 1,000 worlds in a matter of hours. A human agricultural station had destroyed an entire boarding force. Farmers had killed soldiers. The impossible had happened. High Arbiter floated at the center of the chamber. Its body was made of living gas, shifting colors as its emotions changed. Right now, it burned bright orange with confusion and anger. This is impossible, it declared. Our psychological profiles said humans would surrender under threat of violence. Our experts said they were too afraid of war to fight. How did this happen? The ambassador rose from her seat. Her crystal body flickered with barely controlled rage. The humans cheated. They used poison gas. They used suicide attacks. They fought like animals, not civilized beings. This was not warfare. This was murder. Your soldiers invaded their home. Someone called out from the back of the chamber. What did you expect them to do? Welcome you with flowers? The chamber erupted in noise. Dozens of species shouted at once. The translator systems struggled to keep up, pulsed brighter and brighter until the room fell silent. Enough, it commanded. We need to understand what happened. You are the analysts. Explain this. The representative stepped forward. Though were known throughout the galaxy for their intelligence and precision, they collected data. They found patterns. They explained things that others could not understand. We have re-examined all evidence regarding humanity, the said. Its voice was calm and measured. We have found an error in our original analysis. What error? We assumed that human fear of war came from weakness. We were wrong. They activated a holographic display. Images of human history appeared in the air. Battlefields, bombs, burning cities. Humans do fear war. They fear it more than almost any species in the galaxy. But their fear does not come from inability. It comes from experience. The images changed. Now they showed laboratories, scientists working with strange equipment, mushroom clouds rising over test sites. Most species in this council developed space travel before they developed weapons of mass destruction. Humans did the opposite. They created nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, and biological weapons before they ever left their planet. For decades, they lived with the knowledge that they could destroy their entire species with the push of a button. The chamber was silent now. Every eye, sensor, and antenna was focused on the. They did not destroy themselves, but they came close. Many times, they learned to fear their own capacity for violence. They built systems to prevent war. They created art about its horrors. They taught their children that fighting should always be the last choice, never the first. The paused. We interpreted this as weakness. We thought humans avoided war because they could not handle it. The truth is more dangerous. Humans avoid war because they understand exactly what they are capable of doing once they start. High Arbiter flickered between colors. Then, why did they accept our demands at the negotiations? Why did they give up territory without a fight? Because they hoped they would not have to show us. A new voice answered. An ambassador walked into the chamber. He had been given observer status after the incident. Now every species in the room turned to look at him. He was small compared to most of them, a soft creature made of flesh and bone. He should have looked weak. He did not look weak. Humans have a concept called the last resort, said. It means we try everything else first. Talking, negotiating, compromising. even giving up things that are important to us. We do this not because we are afraid to fight, but because we know what happens when we do fight. We know the cost. We have paid it many times. He walked to the center of the chamber, standing directly beneath. At the negotiations, we gave up mining rights, rocks, minerals, things that can be replaced. We did this because we hoped they would be satisfied. We hoped they would see our willingness to compromise as wisdom, not weakness. His voice grew harder. We were wrong. They saw our peace as permission. They thought they could take more. They sent 12 warships to attack a farming station. They killed 11 of our people, farmers, teachers, an 8-year-old girl named who liked to draw pictures of flowers. The chamber was completely silent. 31 survivors fought 300 soldiers, continued. They used farming tools and cleaning chemicals and courage. They won. But they did not win because they were soldiers. They won because they had no other choice. When you threaten a human's home, their family, their children, something changes inside them. The fear does not go away. It transforms. It becomes focus. It becomes rage. It becomes an absolute refusal to die quietly. He looked up at. You wanted to understand what happened at station. That is what happened. You pushed us until we had no choice left. And then you discovered something that every enemy in our history has discovered eventually. What is that? Asked. His eyes were cold. Humans are the most dangerous when they are afraid, because fear makes us fight like we have nothing left to lose. And when we fight like that, we do not stop. We do not surrender. We do not show mercy. We fight until the threat is gone or we are dead. There is no middle ground. He turned to face the ambassador. Your soldiers killed 11 of my people. In return, my people killed 300 of yours. And those were farmers, ambassador, untrained civilians with no weapons. He let the words hang in the air. What do you think will happen if you face our soldiers? The ambassador said nothing. For the first time since the chamber had opened, her crystal body showed no light at all. She was afraid. and she was right to be. The collective did not learn from station. They believed it was luck. They believed that farmers could not defeat real soldiers twice. They believed that humans were still weak, still soft, still easy to break. They attacked 3 human colony worlds at the same time. Admiral was drinking coffee when the distress calls came. She was the commander of the 7th Expeditionary Fleet, a small force of 8 destroyers, 2 cruisers, and 1 carrier called the. Her fleet was on its way to a diplomatic meeting when the emergency signal cut through all channels. Multiple attacks detected. Colony worlds and under heavy bombardment. Fleet strength estimated at 84 warships. Civilian casualties climbing. Request immediate assistance. Set down her coffee and walked to the bridge. Her senior officers were already waiting. Captain of the destroyer, commander of the destroyer, tactical officer, intelligence chief. Report ordered. His hands moved across her console. Maps and numbers filled the main screen. The collective has divided their forces across 3 systems. Each attack group has approximately 28 warships. They are using mass casualty tactics, bombing population centers, targeting hospitals and schools. Current death toll is approximately 40,000 civilians. That number is rising fast. Response options. Shook his head slowly. We have 11 ships. They have 84. Standard doctrine says we retreat and wait for reinforcement. 6 weeks minimum. Projected casualties in 6 weeks. 3 to 4 million. The bridge was silent. Everyone understood what those numbers meant. 3 to 4 million men, women, and children. Dead because help did not come in time. A captain spoke first. There is another option. Looked at him sharply. You cannot be serious. The protocol. The words hung in the air like a curse. The protocol was named after Admiral Yi of ancient Korea, who had defeated a fleet of 133 enemy ships with only 13 of his own. It was a doctrine of absolute asymmetric warfare. It meant throwing away every rule of civilized combat. It meant fighting dirty, fighting cruel, fighting with no mercy and no restraint. It had never been used outside of simulations. That protocol was designed for existential threats, said carefully. The collective is not an existential threat. They are killing our children, Admiral replied. Her voice was very quiet. They are bombing our schools. They are burning our homes. That sounds like an existential threat to me. She turned to face her officers. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes burned with something cold and ancient. I am not ordering you to do this. The protocol requires voluntary participation. If any of you believe we should retreat and wait for backup, say so now. I will not hold it against you. No one spoke. Then we are in agreement. Turned back to the main screen. Begin preparations. Over the next 6 hours, the 7th Fleet scattered. The 8 destroyers split into pairs and headed for different locations. The 2 cruisers began deploying automated weapon platforms on asteroids and moons. The carrier launched all of its fighters, but not for attack. Instead, they spread out across the 3 star systems, becoming a network of sensors and relay points. The fleet detected the approaching humans. 84 warships against 11. The collective commander laughed when he saw the numbers. The soft creatures come to die, he announced. Destroy them quickly and continue the bombardment. But the humans did not fight like the collective expected. The first destroyer, the Ulsan, appeared near a collective supply convoy. It did not fire its weapons. Instead, it accelerated to maximum speed and rammed directly into the largest supply ship. The Ulsan's crew ejected in escape pods just before impact. The explosion destroyed 3 enemy vessels and scattered supplies across the void. The second attack came from nowhere. A mining drone that had been drifting silently for 2 days suddenly activated and crashed into a collective cruiser's engine section. The cruiser lost power and drifted helplessly. Human fighters appeared moments later and finished it off. The third attack was even worse. The atmospheric system of a captured space station had been rigged with chemicals. When collective soldiers tried to use it as a base, the air turned to poison. 300 soldiers died in minutes. The attacks came faster and faster. Hidden weapons on moons. Suicide drones launched from asteroids. False signals that led collective ships into trap after trap. The humans never fought directly. They struck and vanished. They killed and disappeared. They fought like ghosts made of anger. Admiral sent one message to the collective fleet commander. You have 24 hours to leave our territory. After that, there will be no negotiation, no surrender, no mercy. This is your only warning. The collective commander was furious. You threaten us. You are 11 ships against 84. We will crush you. 24 hours and 16 minutes later, his flagship exploded. A mining drone had been attached to its hull for 2 days, waiting for the right moment. By the end of the week, the collective's 84 ships had been reduced to 19. Human losses were 2 destroyers and 412 personnel. The surviving fled. Admiral stood on the bridge of the and watched them run. Her face was tired. Her hands were steady. She had done what needed to be done. A captain approached her. "We won," he said. Yes, did not smile. "We won." You do not sound happy. She was quiet for a long moment. When I was young, my father told me a story about our ancestors. He said that Koreans have always been surrounded by enemies, bigger enemies, stronger enemies. We survived because we learned to fight in ways our enemies did not expect. We learned to be patient. We learned to be cruel. We learned to be absolutely ruthless when there was no other choice. She looked at the empty space where the collective fleet had been. But he also told me that this came with a cost, that every time we fought like this, we left a piece of ourselves on the battlefield, the piece that believes in mercy, the piece that believes in kindness, The peace that believes humans should be better than animals. I had no answer for that. We won, repeated. But I am not happy. I do not think I will be happy for a very long time. She turned away from the window. Set course for home. We are done here. The Galactic Council chamber was more crowded than it had ever been. Representatives from every species in the galaxy had come to hear what humanity would say. Cameras floated in the air, broadcasting to 1 trillion watching eyes. The war was over. The had been defeated. Now everyone wanted to know what came next. An ambassador walked to the center of the chamber alone. He moved slowly. His shoulders were heavy with something invisible. He looked older than he had before the war. The gray in his hair had spread. The lines around his eyes had deepened. He stopped beneath the great dome and looked up at the assembled species. Then he began to speak. You asked humanity to join your council. You studied us. You analyzed us. You decided we were a harmless species, too traumatized by our own history to be dangerous, too afraid of war to fight. He paused. You were half right. He activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air above him. Station where farmers had killed soldiers. The burning colonies of End. The shattered remains of the fleet scattered across 3-star systems. We lost 62,000 civilians in the attacks. Parents who will never see their children grow up. Children who will never see another birthday. Old people who survived the worst centuries of human history, only to die in what should have been a peaceful retirement among the stars. He let the images hang in the air. In response, we killed approximately 12,000. Soldiers, yes, but also conscripts. Young ones who had never wanted to fight. Ones who were just following orders because they did not know how to refuse. His voice cracked slightly. He took a moment to collect himself. Your analysts will write reports about this war. They will talk about our unexpected military capability. They will discuss our tactical flexibility. They will conclude that humanity achieved decisive victory with minimal losses. They will call it a success story. He shook his head slowly. It does not feel like success. It never does. Because every human who fought in this war will carry it with them forever. They will wake up in the night remembering the faces of those they killed. They will flinch at loud noises. They will struggle to feel joy in simple things. This is the price we pay for victory. This is the weight we carry. The chamber was completely silent. A trillion beings watched and listened. You want to understand why humans dread war, continued. I will tell you. We dread it because we remember every battle, every death, every face of every enemy we have ever killed. We build monuments so we cannot forget. We write poetry so our children will understand the cost. We teach history not as glory but as warning. He looked directly at the ambassador. She sat in the back of the chamber, surrounded by guards. Her crystal body was dim and colorless. The thought our fear made us weak. They were wrong. Our fear makes us careful. It makes us hesitate. It makes us try every other option before we choose violence. But when those options are gone, our fear becomes something else. It becomes focus. It becomes will. It becomes an absolute commitment to ending the threat, no matter the cost. Behind him, the holographic display changed. Now it showed Admiral standing on the bridge of her ship, speaking to her crew as they returned home. The recording was quiet and private, but the Council's systems had captured it. We did what was necessary, said in the recording. Now we go home. We hold our families. We mourn what we have lost and what we have taken. And we pray to whatever gods will listen that we never have to do this again. They turned back to face the council. Humanity accepts full membership in the Galactic Council. We will participate in diplomatic processes. We will contribute to collective security. We will work toward peace with every species that is willing to pursue it. His voice hardened. But let this be understood clearly. We will never again give up territory because of threats. We will never again sacrifice our people to avoid conflict. And any species that mistakes our desire for peace as weakness. He paused for a long moment, and will learn exactly why we tried so hard to leave our wars behind. The chamber erupted in noise. Dozens of species talked over each other. Some were angry, some were scared, some were impressed, but did not stay to listen. He had said what he needed to say. He walked out of the chamber and did not look back. 30 years passed. The memorial at station grew larger every year. The names of the 11 who died in the battle were carved into metal walls that would last for centuries. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see it. Humans and aliens alike walked through the halls and read the words written above the entrance. They were farmers. They became warriors. They never wanted to fight. But when there was no other choice, they chose to stand. An elderly stood before the wall one afternoon. Beside it was a young human girl, perhaps 12 years old. Her name badge read. She was named after her grandmother, the commander who had led the defense of the station. The commander who had died 5 years after the battle, her health never recovering from the chemicals she had breathed while fighting. Your species has changed the council, the said. Before you came, we believed that civilization meant moving beyond violence. That advanced species did not fight. Now we understand something different. Civilization means choosing not to use violence, even when you have the power to destroy. Young looked at the names on the wall. She touched her grandmother's name with her fingertips. My grandmother did not want to fight, she said quietly. No, but she did. Because she had to. The considered this. Its species prided itself on analysis and logic, but humans had always been difficult to analyze. Their behavior never quite fit the expected patterns. Your people still write sad poetry about war, they observed. Even after proving yourselves to be the most effective fighters in council space. Why? Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady and old beyond her years. The poetry is not about being afraid to fight. It is about remembering why fighting is sad. So we never start wanting to do it. So we never forget the cost. She turned to look at the directly. Humans do not dread war because we are weak. We dread it because we know what we become when we stop dreading it. The stopped fearing violence. They started to enjoy it. They thought power meant they could take whatever they wanted, and now they are almost extinct. They had no response. Young turned back to the memorial. Somewhere in the station, children were laughing. Crops were growing. Life was continuing the way it always did. My grandmother taught me something before she died, said. She said that the strongest people are not the ones who never feel fear. The strongest people are the ones who feel fear and fight anyway, who hate violence and use it anyway, who carry the weight of what they have done and keep walking anyway. She touched her grandmother's name one last time. That is what it means to be human. We carry the weight. We remember the cost. And we pray that we never have to pay it again. They stood in silence for a long time after the girl left. It thought about everything it had learned in 30 years of studying humanity. The data, the patterns, the behaviors that never quite made sense. Finally, it understood. The soft species had never been soft at all. They had simply chosen to be gentle, and there was a vast difference between the two. The left the memorial and returned to its ship. It had a new report to write, a new conclusion to share with the council. Humans were not to be conquered. Humans were not to be threatened. Humans were not to be pushed into corners. Because humans remembered their wars. And a species that remembered its wars would always be more dangerous than a species that glorified them. The galaxy had finally learned its lesson. The question was whether it would remember.